Sometimes when you're writing a program, you're going to notice that you're writing the same lines of code over and over again. Now, this is a perfect example where you might want to use a function. A function is just a group of code that we can kind of put together and define by a simple name. Then we can call that name, and it's just like as if we had written that whole group of lines of code again. This simplifies our life and is actually part of what we call the dry programming method. Now, dry is short for don't repeat yourself. And there are several reasons why you don't want to have to repeat yourself. Instead, just make a function call. A couple examples of those reasons why is it actually simplifies your code. You might say, well, how does writing an external function simplify it? Well, if you give that function a meaningful name, instead of trying to figure out what these 3, 4, or maybe 24 lines of code are, you can look at that meaningful name and go, oh, I know what that's for. I know what it's doing. Second, that makes it so you can reuse your code over and over again. Remember, the whole purpose of a function was so you don't have to write that same block of code over and over again. This actually is going to make it also better for testing and debugging. That is because if I use a function call maybe a dozen times throughout a program and I find a problem with it, I fix that problem once and everywhere else it's automatically fixed for us. And of course, the other reason why is it just makes it faster to write our code. We take a little bit of time up front and create our function, and instead we get a huge benefit because we don't have to write all that code all those other times in the future. So writing and using functions becomes very important and is very useful, especially as our programs get larger and larger, more complex. Now, there's different types of functions, and all of them start off with the same basic way. In Python, we'll use the def command to define our function. We then give it a function name and have a list of optional parameters. Now, I say optional meaning that your function may have parameters that you pass to it, or it may not. Typically, if you define a parameter as a part of a function, then you need to always pass that parameter. And that helps us to really expand on what a function can do by giving it some options. So the two main types of functions we're going to look at, though, and we're going to see in just a few minutes, is going to be a void function. And that's a function that goes off and just does something and comes back. And it doesn't give us any information. You might think, well, what's the purpose of that? Well, you've actually already been using functions inside of Python. A perfect example is the print function. The print function takes a parameter, that's the text that you want to display to the screen, and it prints it out. It doesn't return anything. We don't know if it printed successfully. We don't get a value back or anything like that. And that's a void function. The second type of function is called a value returning function. And this is where we're going to write a function, and maybe we'll give it some information, maybe we won't, but it's going to return information to us. You've used this before too. The input function, where you get to post a prompt to the user and then it gets some information back, is a perfect example of a value returning function. Now, a lot of programming languages only allow you to return at most one data block. However, Python is unique in that it allows you to return multiple variables or multiple pieces of information in one function call. So Python's going to be a little bit different than some programming languages, and that's okay. We just need to learn to use it in the best way possible. That's what we're going to be doing in the next little section.